Community Board 1, Battery Park City Committee, Wednesday, February 6, 2019. Clock starts at 6:39.
But I would hesitate to say that we don't want loss of greenery.
Yeah.
In the pursuit of modernity and modernization, the loss of trees is more than just a loss of tree in the community, is a loss of air cleaning, fresh oxygen,
Right.
no offense, a place for people to walk their dogs, but all of those things that, a place for shade, which there certainly isn't enough of, and a way to block the wind. And as you well know from your building, it's darn windy. So we would ask that you take a look at all of those factors when you're redoing the front for the new cafe that you
Yeah,
displayed in the,
yeah, and I can confirm that the scope doesn't include changing any of the planters. So the planters, as they are now, remain. There's no change to them. There might be an elevation, we might rework the grade between the planter and the building, but the actual planters remain with all the greenery that's in them right now, so we're not swapping any of that out.
Mason? Jeff? Eric?
Yeah.
All right, so that, Kathy?
I'm all in favor of quality, accessible daycare for the
Yeah.
community, but is there a point where Bright Horizons might be perhaps relocating and those storefronts get activated again, or?
We'll have to see. I mean, there's obviously logistics, because there's a major construction project and children around, so I think we'll have to work with them in terms of maybe moving some pieces. So we'll have to see, time will tell as that plays out. In terms of activating more street front, I think, obviously Bright Horizons is what it is. I hear the point about maybe adding some seating and adding just a little more liveliness, and I think that feeds in well with having a cafe, whether it be La Palm Q-Tibet across the street or what we're doing. I think that there's a lot of reasoning and it makes a lot of sense to have some more activation like that. But from a pure retail perspective, there just quite frankly won't be additional retail storefronts put onto Southland Avenue, so you're not going to get kind of that in and out kind of activity that you get as if it was a additional retailer.
Close this.
Open idea.
I take the bus frequently,
Yeah.
and also what used to be there down at the southern end was a lot of bench seating, and it was pleasant, like if the bus shelter can fit like 3 people, 4 people. There was a place to sit, it was a bus layover, so you're often like waiting for the driver or whatever. Do you see anything going on with that corner down there, or?
I mean, quite honestly, it's not part of our plan for the actual renovation, so I think that there's it seems like there's an overall desire to kind of reactivate the Southland Avenue on the east side. So I can take that back to the team and we can look at some options. I mean, certainly the easy one would be adding seating right outside of called the gatehouse, the kind of the rotunda area. And then further south from there, we'd have to take a closer look and work with BPCA on what makes sense, but certainly hear the concern and the need for more activation.
I mean, we're gonna stick with that building in particular for the questions, and then we'll move on to other questions.
This is
Matt?
that building by extension. Over the roof of the garage entrance on Albany Street,
Yeah.
there's this deck that was designed as public space. It has never once for 5 minutes been open to the public.
Yeah.
You could fit a tennis court up there, or a playground for kids, and you could even, I know there are logistic security concerns about entering through the building, you could put a staircase up the outside on either end of the garage. Any chance you're interested in doing that as a favor to the community? Because
We've looked at it. I think there's a lot of ideas, and certainly
what were the ideas that you looked at?
certainly a public park, certainly an amenity for the building that could be accessible for the public. So we'll see. It's definitely in the back of our minds that we want to activate that. I think it's a little bit driven by what happens with the rest of the development, but I think it certainly, it could be, a restaurant space that's
No.
open, so.
It's supposed to be a public space.
Public space
Yeah,
would be
no, I
a
think-
public
so
space
there's-
for public use.
There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of
Restaurants
a lot
are
of
not
things for
public
it that we can
spaces.
take a
Well,
look at.
they're also
We'd
If
like
you-
to activate it.
If you can find a way to activate that and link it to that dead corner
Yeah.
somehow, whether it's, to link those two, it could be an amazing public amenity. But
Especially because you're talking about taking away public space in the gatehouse or that Oxycon building. If transactionally you're willing to say to the community we would like to create a public amenity, not something commercial, but actually something of civic value for people who live and work here to use free of charge, that might be a fair trade-off in terms of what the community's being asked to forego, in terms of space that it.
Yeah, good idea, go for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're just taking away public space.
You
but
are.
Physical.
There are
space,
people
but
who would in
in terms of-
fact say that you would.
Yeah.
You know,
In terms of just, but in terms of how people use the space, I think what we're trying to do is make it a better destination, make it a better place for the community. Because really, right now, it is a little bit of there is kind of more of a dead space feel to it sometimes. So I think that what we're trying to do is not only activate it with more seating, but add kind of better, more lounge-worthy seating that actually is not just steel chairs. So
Public parks are dead compared to like a casino being built there, but there's value to public parks, even if they're quiet and don't attract, large crowds of people.
Yeah.
And there would be value for the community in this, especially in trade-off for what there is a broad consensus perception is being lost here.
yeah.
Judith?
Well, I really hope you're not gonna make that a restaurant. I actually wasn't aware of that space, but I really hope from someone that lives on Albany Street,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of noise from that restaurant that's on the corner of Albany and South End Avenue. In particular, in the summer, you have a lot of
That side, yeah.
Treadwell, very intoxicated
I can
people.
put it to you this way. At this point, I text Abraham
Yeah.
nights and weekends.
Yeah.
Because it's not,
And
It's not a great
a lot of the people that are there are not from the community. So you have people coming in from all over, like typically young people, very intoxicated, like hanging off the balcony,
Right.
and it's just really loud. And for those of us that live on the block, it was not at all what I envisioned. When that restaurant came in, it used to be very quiet there. And I mean, my kids are complaining about the noise when they're trying to sleep. So I would be strongly opposed to a restaurant at that location.
Ditto.
I would add that you've got an opportunity here because a restaurant would almost certainly not be viable there. It's this dead-end space in the middle of nowhere that the only
Yeah, so
conceivable value I think you could harvest would be something civic that, would
I
add to
can think of a
quality work.
fabulous civic idea because there is, I think, a 3-year wait list for the community garden.
Mhm.
And if that
What a
deck
fantastic
has
idea.
a benefit to be able to be used as partial,
That's great, yeah.
as expansion, both there and the corner, the ground level corner, to find a way to make that. There's a many-year list, and
Yeah.
having additional gardens of any kind in the neighborhood has always shown not only value for the neighborhood, but value for you as well.
Yeah, no, look, I think it's a unique space, and I think you're right, it's a challenge in terms of just access and where it's located, so, we've been ideating on it. It's clear that the renovation is really focused on is maintaining the value and creating the building and just the desirability of it from a pure user standpoint, so the focus there is on the lobby sequence and just some of the retail offerings in public space, but, the back end, quite frankly, is a little bit of a puzzle that we're kind of working through, so I think it's.
Tennis
all-
court sounds nice too.
Yeah, come back and talk.
Gardens downstairs, tennis court upstairs.
I guess what I would tell you is that as much as you think it's a great idea to do what you're doing in 200 Rector in that gatehouse,
Yeah.
not a lot of people agree with you who live here. So this might be a trade-off in doing something at the same time, not 10 years from now, but activating that space now
Mhm.
might be a reason to make people back off a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's, like, from our perspective too, it's not that we're renovating something that we're not doing it because, just for random reasons, we're doing it because we need to keep the building competitive, right, in order to lease space. But
You've
that
done
has,
such a great job with that so far.
well, but that has a domino effect, right?
Was I sarcastic there? Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, let's not.
Okay, I'm stopping
let's not-
now.
Yeah, stop,
When you-
let's
when
not
you
beat the
walk
man
through
up, he's here
complex,
nicely.
When you
We can
put
always beat
your,
him up later.
That's
your,
true.
um,
Yes, you're right.
your user hat on as a person that works in the complex, there's a clear night and day between the buildings, and for us, in order to have that building be a viable office building and be able to lease space in it, we need to be able to reinvest in it and to attract tenants, and that in turn, though, has an impact on the community, because it enables us to continue to pay ground rent to BBCA. It also creates jobs in the form of, 1, construction jobs, and 2, additional retail. So there is more to it than just saying, hey, we want to, destroy the 1980s vintage, which is, like I said, there's, obviously it's subjective, but I can hear everyone's point about kind of the legacy, architectural effect. But there is kind of a bigger picture.
There's a good value to gardens and tennis courts as well.
Yeah.
on an area that you can't enliven with a restaurant anyway, so, and, I mean,
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah.
Jonathan had a question.
I have a couple questions, but are you doing something to the bridge that's going across the West Side Highway?
No, that's already been renovated,
Right, I thought,
yeah,
because I've heard talks about replacing the panels on the outside. That's
No, that's not part of it, and I think, I'd have to check, that might be, I know we manage it, but that might be important,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought when you said
That
the
was a
bridge-
BPCA Port Authority discussion,
Yeah.
because of the dents and dings,
Yeah.
there was a movement afoot to replace the panels, to remove them, and a counter movement to leave them there because the scars are beautiful, as they say. And it provides context of where we live.
Yeah,
Any other questions on that, Patrick?
Just one quick question, are you gonna change anything dealing with the loading dock?
No, the loading dock will be the same. If there's any concerns on how it's utilized now, I'm happy to hear them out, but, and that's just another thing too, so in terms of the construction logistics, it would be similar in terms of materials in and out as a regular tenant build out, so they'd be coming through the loading dock, there won't be anything, we won't be parking trailers or things on the street necessarily, so it will come through the loading dock and through the building and up into the lobby.
The one thing I will tell you is that many of the problems on South End Avenue are generated by companies that service the Brookfield buildings that park in the middle of South End Avenue. They do not want to wait for the loading dock.
Yeah.
They're either not allowed to park in, it's not their schedule, whatever it is. The double parking on Albany has gotten a little bit better. I won't say much, but it has gotten improved with, I think, NYPD's crackdown. But I have never to this day understood why they couldn't queue on the circle drive that you have in front of that building or park there versus parking in the middle of South End Avenue, which is so dangerous for the pedestrians.
Well, so
And the
what I
cars.
would say to that is, we can certainly work with you to, no pun intended, curb that. We have rules and regs, the tenants need to follow the rules and regs, deliveries need to be scheduled, they need to come to the building. If there's tenants that are either knowingly or unknowingly going around those rules and regs, we can have a conversation. We just need to identify, and I can work with the building to start to keep an eye out, but we can try to see, who's.
You have your own security. They pass
Yeah.
by straight up and down South End Avenue every day on their little scooter. You can just look. I mean, it's not hard to know. And I do know that you do not allow people who are doing deliveries to park in your cul-de-sac.
Right, so, yeah. it's pretty cool.
They can't, a FedEx truck, a UPS truck, nobody can park there.
Has to come to the loading dock, yeah.
They don't park in the loading dock either.
Okay, nope, I think that's a great thing that we can start to be more aware of, and I can talk to our team and maybe set up kind of more of a protocol for them to keep an eye out and to act on it.
Dr. K?
Glad you bring that up since Tammy brought it up. Same problem on North End Avenue. The backup for people going to the loading dock, off of North End Avenue and Vesey Street,
Yeah.
they block up not only across all of the Irish Monument, so I can't use the curb cut, so I
Yeah.
can't get on the street that way. But they block off my building too. And they can back up way down the block, waiting.
Is it mostly in the morning, or is it all day?
It's in the evening.
Evenings?
It's
Okay.
like, why can't they schedule them better or let them park inside beyond the
So we don't understand, it used to be, before you built that gatehouse out, that driveway area, you used to be able to stage trucks back there.
Yeah.
And they don't allow any trucks to stage back there any longer. I understand there's a pull-in, pull-out area, but there's still enough room.
Yeah.
But they don't, so instead, they idle and double park going down
Yeah,
North End.
quite honestly, I've seen it, so I'm gonna be honest, I can't speak in detail, but what I could do is if you'd like to bring it up, what I would wanna say is we could bring back somebody from our operations team who can kind of speak in more depth to actual protocol and how this is done. I know for a fact that loading dock is open 24/7. You have to schedule ahead of time. You can't just show up with a truck. You need to supply driver's name, license, insurance has to be provided. So there is a very vetted process, I would say. And the queuing for the security is really the issue. So I'd have to understand from the operations team maybe a little more detail how, if we can.
If you could
Make it
work
more
with us
efficient.
on that, we would really appreciate it, because with the amount of commercial that's going on and the addition, and we know you change, so there are pop-up shops that come in December that go out, and the amount of traffic, additional traffic, is just putting a point on when Battery Park City Authority and DOT redo South End Avenue, if your ops team isn't better prepared, it will be a nightmare for all of us, because there will be no more median. And we've gotten to that point that there will be no more median for them to park in. So your ops team needs to know, adjustments will need to be made for that.
Yeah.
And we're getting to a point on North End due to the placards, which we have not been able to successfully solve in all of New York City.
Right.
With the delivery trucks, it's become an untenable situation, specifically for the River House.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think we're more than happy to work with you on that and work with PPCA. And I think it's actually a good idea for us to talk about South End Avenue and how we can,
Yeah.
work together on that. So.
we were even willing to talk to DOT potentially about changing where your little driveway indentations are. Right now it says no standing anytime, and there's a couple indentations in front of where Sant'Ambrose and the rest of them are opening on West Street.
Yeah.
We were open with DOT to have that be more loading for you and pausing,
Right.
and they were open to the idea, but before we say yes to anything
Yeah.
or even encourage it, we'd like to have a meeting with the ops team.
Yeah,
because-
and they would tell you if you would need that or if there's a better way to go about something.
Yep.
And
we'd
look,
like-
I think this all is constructive feedback. I think it's not meant to.
No,
Not
we
going
just,
on deaf ears. I think we'll.
we're happy that you
Yeah.
came, you just got to hear all of it,
It's okay.
but not the end of it. So the other, are we done with the 200? Everybody's good? Anybody have any other questions? We want to move across the street to the next Gatehouse building
Yes.
and talk to us about, now that Saks is gone, what are the plans?
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of you have read things that have leaked and whatnot. I can't disclose exactly who the tenant is because the deal is not signed. It's very close to being signed, but we do have a tenant to backfill the static space. It's a little bit of a different kind of use. It's not retail use. It's not an office use either. It's more of an events conferencing. The best way I could describe it is events and conferencing, but with a really heavy hospitality element to it. And if I could just,
You can see the furniture in there.
they haven't started building yet, so I don't know. Right now, it's just the Saks empty space.
Are you sure?
Totally positive.
Okay.
It's not even a signed deal. But to get the full picture, I think it's worth kind of revisiting Saks and what was there before and what happened with Saks. Because I think it's maybe beneficial to everybody to understand kind of the inner workings of that. So go back to even before Saks and while we were doing our renovation even before it, the Saks space that as currently exists was a combination of open lobby areas, right? And also office reception areas and maybe some retail. So it was kind of a mix of everything. When Saks came, we came to Battery Park City and everybody else, we added kind of an additional contiguous space to create an opportunity for Saks. And Saks came in, and it was a little bit of a unique situation where they were leasing an office space. The CEO came in and said, you guys are really doing something interesting here at the retail. We'd love to have a Saks store down here. But we didn't have the space for a full-blown few 100,000 square foot store, so what they wanted to do was test a concept-driven store at Brookfield Place. And that meant a lot of things. That meant a smaller format. That meant instead of doing shop-in-shops, which they traditionally do by having different tenants come in and take a booklet within their own space, they decided to merchandise it themselves. And I think a combination of that and us kind of piecemealing the space together on the south side of the complex, which was a little bit separate from the rest of the retail, in the end, it didn't lead to a successful retail story, and their sales just were nowhere near where they should have been. Despite that fact, the retail as a whole has done pretty well. We're very happy with it. The sales continue to go up. It's performing very well. So for us, it was an opportunity to say, okay, Saks is a great anchor, but it's not driving the traffic that we thought. They're not necessarily doing the sales that we thought. Why don't we upgrade the space and bring in a different kind of amenity? And so what we're doing now is going to be, I think, much more activated in the sense that it'll bring additional people to the site. It'll actually also be a great amenity for people who are on the site. We have incorporated some public elements to it, some F&B elements that will be open to the public, so it won't just be a space that, is just closed off to corporate users. But I would say also that the people that will be using this space, it will be more professionals, it will be the companies, headquarter type companies that are based around Brookfield Place. So from that perspective, it's, first-class operation. We should be signing the deal soon, and, should be open in September, October. So, again, I can't comment, I'm giving probably a lot of detail that
I'm gonna say one thing.
Yeah.
While you're going, just to, Cipriani would be what I call a first-class operation as well. It's very high-end
Yeah.
event space. They have not had the greatest relationship with the community because one of their venues is in a, although highly retail area, also a highly residential area, not unlike yourself. And the amount of time and energy they have had dealing with 311 complaints, NYPD complaints, and the community board and questions for liquor license and everything else has come through because of the impact on the community.
Sure.
So I very, very strongly suggest that whatever you put in that space, if it is, as you say, a venue of any type for events, is that there is more than just a traffic study. Because the impact, I don't know the size, you haven't mentioned any of that, but the impact of access is an issue. It is an issue at every venue that has opened in Lower Manhattan. Because no matter how many times people have come and said, oh, we think everybody's going to arrive by public transportation,
Nobody does.
that's not actually the reality of people who arrive
Yeah.
to high-end galas for not-for-profits. This is why there are so many Lyfts and Ubers and everything else. It's sometimes faster. If you're going to buy a $1,000 ticket to someplace to go to an event, you're not usually getting on the subway to get there, right?
Yeah.
So it's
I think
it's a major hurdle and a major concern that you need to think about and look at, different from other locations, because there are residential buildings of
Sure.
1,700 units across the street.
But I appreciate that concern. And the one thing I'll say though is that Cipriani is very, very different from what this is going to be. Like, this is not nowhere near, like Cipriani I would classify more as like entertainment hospitality. It's more of a restaurant operation. What we're doing here is very far on the other end of the spectrum in terms of that. I mean, this is more really focused on corporate users during the day and into the evening, but not in any way.
An event space is an event space.
Yeah, but it's
Is an event space.
Cipriani is a different operation for sure. I can promise you that.
Depending on which location you're looking at.
So
Yeah.
a corporate event space or a corporate thing where you're gonna have conferences, a kind of idea where you'll have conferences. As someone who actually attends that for work functions, it devolves from being meetings all day to the cocktail hour, to the drunken stages, till 3 o'clock in the morning for the people who get drunk and are puking outside, and then it starts again the next day. That to me is what a corporate, high-end corporate space, a party venue is, because that's kind of what the people who come to them do. Not everybody, but you've got a strong number of people who do that, not me. I'm too old
Look,
for
I
that.
think,
But you're gonna, and this is again, is bringing it into a residential neighborhood, and Tammy's point of, with the Ubers and the Lyfts and everything else, corporate, again, do I take the subway every place? Yes. When it's on my company's dime, not so much. Okay, so I would take, but depending, in New York City, I would take the subway, but I live here and I'm used to it. So people who are coming from the airport are gonna be coming and staying. Where are they staying in the hotels? Everything is around here, we've got so many new hotels coming up, these are the people, the places they're gonna be.
sure.
It is gonna be a bit of a zoo.
Yeah, well, look, I think, we always make it of all of our tenants that they operate in a first-class manner. I mean, we're very structured, and again, we have a lot of rules and regs in place to make sure that happens. I think, along with the restaurants that we have in place now at Brookfield Place, there's a very close rapport that we have with the restaurateurs and kind of how we operate and how we respond and the oversight that we have, and this would be no different. Look, I can respect the concern of that, and that would be an issue, and I don't think what this will be will cause those kinds of issues. Now there's always the one-off thing that happens that, but I don't anticipate that kind of craziness happening, night
Depends
in,
how
night
big
out
it
for
is.
sure. But, and to address the concern on the traffic, so we did hire, an engineering firm to do a traffic study and have shared some of the high-level points, and so.
Did they take into account any changes that have been approved by DOT and
So,
BPCA?
based on their findings, they didn't need to because of the actual turnaround is sufficient enough for the volume of people they expect to have in the space. So we did a break-even analysis even to understand at what point, based on some assumptions, would there be so much traffic that it would back into South End Avenue? And their findings were that it would be a occupancy of exceeding the planned occupancy for the space that would cause that.
But they're not aware of the changes on Liberty either, because all the traffic signs and all of the lanes on Liberty are changing. There'll be,
Look,
I mean, I'm telling you that they need to go back, they need to restudy that and take a look at it again, because this is not, they're looking at existing conditions,
sure.
but new conditions will include parking on both sides of Liberty where there currently is not legal parking. There's gonna, cab line has been an additional to Liberty, and a bike lane, a full-on, so there are major changes to that intersection,
Right.
both at West Street, where the timing is due to change for all the traffic lights, and to the other end, as well as curb bump outs. So the amount of changes that are going to be done to be able to help the neighborhood, help the flow of traffic, and redesign of South End Avenue will have a major impact.
Yeah.
Because what they're looking to do is narrow the street. So now there's these big wide boulevards. That's not what's gonna stay there. What has been approved has been narrowing the streets, where you're gonna have one lane going one way, one lane going the other way, and that's it. You're gonna, so it's gonna be a total different picture.
Yeah, we'll go back and we can double check and we'll see.
And then just before you even
Yeah.
say, one more question to you is, so you said in terms of the size of the venues, what kind of sizes are you looking at? 'Cause I mean, I guess what I'm talking about is I'm envisioning, a conference or whatever with,
Well, the
2,000 to
question-
5,000 people.
Oh.
No,
The question is the occupancy for the
Yeah.
space. What is the occupancy for the space?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
well, it varies depending on retail and office use. I don't.
No, for what
Yeah.
you're gonna sign a contract for,
Yeah,
there has to be an occupancy rate.
Yeah.
There'll be a liquor license.
Well, occupancy is mandated not by us, but by code, right? So when there's the office code and there's retail code, and they each, and I don't know the ratios, but there's a different ratio per square footage that you would be allowed to have so many people on the floor, right? So this use is mandated by office code, right? So
Okay.
they can have, based on their program, they follow the office code. So, in that respect, it's, obviously they're gonna have more people, but at an office floor, you could have open seating, and you could have a lot of people on the office floor. So it's not too different from that in terms of just what the code allows for. But I think they're gonna have venues that'll be at 400 to 500 people, I would say, plus or minus. Now, that would be at full capacity, and in a scenario where the entire thing is booked up. Now, I don't know how often that would be. It might be the case that they have, a certain section of it booked, and that's, 100 people or 50 people. There's a training seminar, and it's, so it may not be 400 people every night. I don't anticipate that it would be, but that would be plus or minus 400 to 500 people the max.
Because you have the school there,
Yeah.
they have events through the year.
Yeah. So we're getting close. I can't, get into more specifics, but I think, I honestly think it'll be an added improvement just in terms of how it affects the center, and we obviously want to take all the precautions in terms of traffic and make sure we're, dotting the i's and crossing the
I
t's.
can see it's a major advantage for the corporations in your buildings
Yeah.
and for the leases that you have within. It is a huge boon for them. I do not see it as a community amenity or community benefit at all. I have grave concerns about the traffic and about community impact. We've already experienced large-scale events that are around the marina, and I look and say to myself, you've got 5,000 people in the back for an event run by Brookfield who is not in necessarily contact with things that are happening at the event space, and there's potentially another 400 people there, and that's a lot of people. It's a lot of people.
Also, Brookfield runs great events there, but once the people walk up the Esplanade, there's nobody from Brookfield past there. And you have hundreds of people walking down South End Avenue or walking down Liberty. So it's just Brookfield says goodbye to it, and that's it, they've left. You know, you had a concert with thousands and thousands of people, which was quite wonderful.
Yeah.
But then when they all leave,
Yeah.
there's nobody,
There's no traffic direction,
There's
there's
no
no
crowd or anything.
management. I mean, security is there to protect the asset, but there is no
Right.
one there to then help the flow of people in or
Right.
out. And that's, so when you're looking at our experience, that's the difference. We want to make sure Jeff, we're going to do the committee. Jeff, and then,
But I'll just, one comment on that, I think those are one-off events, and that's good feedback, and I think that those are events, the concert, for instance, the waterfront, when we used to do that, we had, 7,000 or 8,000 people a night that came there, so, and I think that was a much different experience, where this will be, a couple hundred to maybe a few hundred people. And there won't be, I don't think they'll be looking to, walk through the neighborhoods, they're gonna be looking to either get in a taxi, get an Uber, go to the transit, and probably get onto their, go home or wherever they're moving, so.
we're going to go Jeff, and
Yeah.
then Kathy, and then Judy.
You just answered it, but what do you, I know you can't tell us the name of the signatory, what do you expect, what's the, either fire code limit for that, or the working limit for, like, what kind of numbers can we expect to be using that space?
In terms of occupancy?
Yeah, in terms of what, it sounds like it's a, event space.
Yeah.
What's the most people that can be hosted in that event space that you're looking at? Like an
So I don't
upper-
really remember off the top of my head, but honestly, I think the 4 or 5 hundred people that they're planning is based on the layout and.
Is that
what
per
they-
floor?
No, that's in total. And so it's subject to the kind of the layout, and I don't want to speak on the final plans, but it's somewhere in that ballpark.
Any other question?
Yeah.
Eric, sorry, and then Kathy and Judy.
What community givebacks are we expecting from the company that's going to sign the space? Are school groups going to be allowed to use it? Some of our senior groups going to be allowed to use the space? What sort of community givebacks are they contemplating?
Yeah, well, look, I don't want to speak on their behalf. I think that it's space that we've asked them to do some things in terms of the F&B components open to the public. I think they're great collaborators. I think they're happy to work with everybody. And one of the things is that they have availability. I would definitely put them in touch, for instance, for these types of things. If they have space open and you guys are looking to host something. And again, I can't promise that. This will be their space and their business to run, but I think they're open and collaborative to.
Well, because it was really a 2-part question.
Yeah.
The second part being, to the extent that they're a private actor and they obviously need to make money, would
Yeah.
they be, and can you take back to them that we have discounted rates for community organizations that would maybe want to use the space as opposed to say a corporate charge? Because we've started other private actors in the community board 1 who do provide their space at a discounted rate for
Yeah.
local community groups. So that is something we should push hard.
Yeah, and I don't want to answer that as a yes or no, but I think what I could say is I know that they would be open to having the discussion, and ultimately I think.
But
they're-
you
Couldn't that be part of
ultimately,
your contract?
as the lease,
Requirement?
yeah,
Because it's a lot-
as the
it's a lot
leaseholder, you
easier-
can,
It's a lot easier to ask now or to make the push
Exactly.
now than
So,
after we sign
yeah,
the
you
contract.
have power before the contract's signed
Yeah.
to make that part of the contract.
Yeah, I
Question.
think that we've asked a lot of them, quite honestly, and they're working with us quite nicely, and there's a certain limit where we don't want to get into their business. I think that they will be good partners, I know that. But, there becomes a straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of just getting into their business, but I think that once the deal is signed, I'm sure they'd be happy to come in even and probably present and show you guys, what they're doing and
Well, I
collaborate.
appreciate the answer now,
Yeah.
let the phone go, but
Yeah.
I do know from my own personal experience, background's a corporate deal lawyer,
Yeah.
I can tell you that once you sign the papers, there's not much they're gonna be giving you.
That's right.
If you have a request, or if you want to make a request, want something to be considered, it's gotta be on the front end, but once we sign and you come, they'll tell us lots of platitudes, but to Tammy's point, there are a lot of externalities that the community's gonna have to bear, and we can't tell them they can't make their visitors use cabs or Ubers, or they have to take transit. So if we're gonna bear those, the least we could do, at least the community can ask for, not what Brookfield's asked for in the contract, but
Yeah.
specifically for the community, some give back, specific, this give back, that give back, we very appreciated.
No, I respect that. I'll take that back, and but look, I think the bottom line is we want to be good partners with the community. I would say that Brookfield and even myself are the kind of people that would say something and then sign a document and then not want to partner with people, so.
We have a bit of a bumpy relationship with the events team right now, so
Yeah.
you're not getting the best of that. Kathy, Judith, and then
Yeah.
Audrey. So sorry,
It's okay.
we have bumpy experience with a slight bait and switch from the events team, so I'll just say that we ask these things in advance because we've
Yeah.
already had this experience.
So I know your question now, but
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of moved off the noise topic, but I live on that corner.
Sure.
And there's something unique, I guess, about the way sound echoes there. And, I mean, if like 5 people get off a boat at night and they're having a conversation, walking up that ramp, it's like they're in your living room. A car door slams, same thing. So the thought of like 150 people walking out of an event space, it's just, and,
I mean,
you know, it's not gonna change your plans, but
yeah,
you just need to be aware that it's that intense in
Yeah.
that particular corner, and I don't know what conditions make it that way, but.
You have to, board first, then audience. Judith?
Is there going to be some, I don't know, curfew, so to speak, like what, until what time?
They
are
have to
able-
come to the community board for a liquor license. And the difference has been, we have always granted on the liquor license committee, Brookfield in general, for all the restaurants that did not face the residential community, some flexibility for timing. This venue will probably have a much harder bone to bear, because if you remember, the liquor licenses are extremely different for every single solitary restaurant that's by the residential buildings, every one of them, including, in fact, North End Grill had a different operating hours because they were across the street from a building. So when Convene comes, no matter what they think their operating hours are, they need to get it approved by the community board, and that is a conversation to be had at that point. I mean, but it is well noted that they should do their research and not only base it on the restaurants inside, because this is a very different location.
So you're talking about 10 o'clock,
11.
maybe 11.
Not a 2 AM liquor license.
I'll let them.
Let
talk
them
to
know
us.
that,
I-
but
I don't
let
know
them
what
know
their-
that
I
that's
don't know
something.
what the- I don't know
they
what
don't-
the plan
he
is, so I
doesn't
can't,
want to.
again, I can't, I know they'll want one, but I can't speak to what their framework for when they'll, how long they'll let it.
We'll be ready.
You know, I have a question, sir. When you talk about the amount of people that they're gonna have, and, you know, for these events, how much will Brookfield be involved in controlling the crowd that's there? Will Brookfield be evident to see how things are going and how they're running, so that if something happens, it can be taken care of on the spot?
Yeah, I mean, we have, you know, security across the complexes, and they're gonna have personnel, and I think, you know, we have.
Because that's important.
Yeah, no, we have a full-time security team monitoring the center.
Okay.
So I think we're pretty well prepared. If we need to adjust that and to accommodate, then we can take a look at that and adjust as needed. But I think we'll have it covered.
I can personally tell you that if somebody is drunk, once they have left Brookfield,
It's up to Patrick.
they will not do anything. I can tell you, I reported a poor girl sitting on the corner outside of Saks, like right by where the
Yeah.
fire hydrant was, and the security team specifically told me they are beyond our borders. So it is a concern because
Yeah.
Brookfield Security only does within the boundaries of Brookfield.
Right.
And once you get, I mean, Patrick does not, his team from the ambassadors do not do anything in the commercial zone. And in your security team's purview, if you hit the edge of the sidewalk, you are no longer in Brookfield zone. So it's no man's land. So if you want to try and address that for the community, that would be,
I honestly have to come back to you guys on that, because I don't know what the protocol is. And
I know.
I would say that
We do.
Yeah,
We
I would
do.
say that we have a very good team of life and safety
Mhm.
people, and people who have their backgrounds in terms of their qualifications are none. So, I'm sure they'd be able to speak to kind of protocol and everything else, and I can talk to them.
Matt,
Two questions. One is a lot of the skepticism or bridging the what happens, to promises after the contract is signed, might be addressed if you brought these people here prior to signing a lease with them. Is that possible?
So-
Or after the lease, before they come for a liquor license,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to talk about operations.
I guess that's
Yeah,
more of a
that's-
recommendation than a question.
No, that's probably fine. Look, I think that, we want your feedback. I think that it's important that we, incorporate, we work with you guys and then take that back to the tenant and make sure that we're being flexible on all sides. I think that basically what we can't have is a kind of an approval. Like, we want to take your feedback, we want to incorporate it, we want to have the F&B components up in the public, we want to make sure that everything is safe.
I don't think anybody here
Yeah.
mentions veto power, but having the
Yeah.
conversation start before you're officially married to them might at least avoid misunderstandings or
Matt,
Or-
I think they're already engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's-
buying growth.
before you're pregnant, if they were.
Well, look, I think here's the fact of the matter. I mean, it's, again, it was kind of dead space before Saks came. Retail didn't work. There's not many, quite honestly, there's not much in terms of optionality of what would go there. I mean, retail, the environment right now is not such that you can go lease another 80,000 square feet, and so, so quite frankly, it's a necessary deal because it adds an amenity to the complex, but it's also a necessary deal in order to continue the sustainability of the project. Because to have 80,000 square feet to the vacant is
That
not.
actually leads to my second question.
Yeah.
Suppose this doesn't work out. Does there come a point where you decide that having absorbed what once was public space is just no longer in your interest? Would you give it back and put it back the way it was? A lot of people, although
Yeah.
it was often half empty or nearly empty,
Right.
a lot of people really like the space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I dispute
Yeah,
your assessment of it as dead space. There were
was
people,
a beloved
this
space,
beautiful
actually.
grand entrance
It
to
was a
your
cathedral.
property, iconic, just.
Yeah.
It wasn't ka-chinging the cash register, which I understand is part of what a real estate company has to consider.
Yeah.
And if your exclusive definition of highest and best use is, are we monetizing this to the absolute maximum of its potential, then yes, given those assumptions, it was dead space. There are other ways to look at this, and
Sure.
there was value in just the beauty of the space. The fact that it was often mostly empty meant it was quiet
Yeah.
and peaceful. And if it turns out to be financially unviable for you, would you consider approaching the Battery Park City Authority and saying, how about we stop paying ground rent on it as retail and you take it back and we put it back as a true public amenity in the sense that.
Well, anything's possible. I would just be candid, that's probably unlikely. I think the more likely scenario would be to carve it up into individual spaces and kind of go and find other services and the kind of, yeah.
Go ahead.
To Matt's point, and that is my question,
Yeah.
is before it was Saks, it was public space. I don't see that Brookfield repurposed our public space anywhere else. And we seem to be missing that public space that we used to have as part of the build out of that entire structure. So I'm looking for Brookfield to give us back our square footage, our dead benches. We'd like some of those back.
I think though it's the general investment that we make in the, arts and events that we do, and the spaces that are public, and the amount of money that we spend on keeping them vibrant and keeping them to like a place that we actually want to come to and spend time is really where we focus a lot of our efforts, and to say that we took,
But the building itself
yeah.
had square footage allocation of community public open space.
That shrank.
And
For
that is
the
been-
tenants as well as for.
Right, and that
Yeah.
has been removed, so,
That,
can you
yeah,
come back with
that I
us?
can't speak to what the allocations were. I know we have, there's caps on how much space we can have as certain uses, I know that, but I don't know what.
But that has changed with your approval by the Battery Park City Authority to take the space. Correct.
They've been granted permission by the authority to take the
Yeah,
space.
for Saks, for a one-off thing, yeah. And that's all important to think, like, the Saks space is kind of a unique situation when it comes to, the rest of the project. It's really the only space where we kind of
And my-
added it in
And
there.
my other point is on event space in
Yeah.
Battery Park City. Hudson Event Space at the end of West Thames. I don't know if you're familiar with the trials and tribulations of that space on the community and the car services in the could
Oh.
gain some insight on what has not worked for them.
Yeah.
And you can,
And what was it called?
The Hudson Club.
Hudson.
The Hudson.
In fact, it was not too far from what you're describing, although I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
that yours will be much more professional. They created this venue, which they're now calling co-working, but originally, they were gonna have these events there for
Yeah.
like blockchain investors and stuff like that. And it turned into these drunken bacchanals that, went on till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they ended up with NYPD Vice taking guys away in handcuffs and padlocking the place. Not that that would ever happen in Brookfield, but it's
Yeah.
an example of how
It's an
things can go wrong really quickly. Would you ever consider 80,000 square feet? People have pushed for years down here for a consolidated pre-K center, leasing that to build it's not big enough for the right shape for a full-on school, but a pre-kindergarten center for the next like 30 years, or?
I think we would love to have more, uses, whether it's daycare or just education. I think that we're totally open to that, in general.
Works for the population,
Yeah.
just where they'll bring their kids to work, that's it.
And we talked to a handful, actually, for a couple of the spaces we have available. And I think we're open to it. There's lots of
Yeah.
code and regulation around it in terms of where and how big, but yeah, I think that's.
Fartherfield, different subject. Is Brookfield looking at buying Gateway Plaza?
I don't know, but, wouldn't be under my purview if we were, but, so.
You might know about it if Brookfield's were though, right?
Maybe, but, we're buying a lot nowadays. I probably would know about it, but not
I just have 2 silly questions. When does the district's lease, like, what's going on with the district? Are we getting rid of them anytime soon?
Do you want to?
I'd love to see Italy there instead of, and then they move, I was just
Well,
wondering.
Lake District's on a long-term lease, so, and you know what, the Public Coxes have been great partners, their business is doing really well, it's gone up every year. They're actually gonna be reinvesting in, just some of the aesthetics of space and reprogramming some of it, but they've been doing really well, so.
So you wouldn't put it, so in other words, in the 80,000 square feet, which I know is small for a supermarket, then
Yeah.
Trader Joe's would never ever go in, yes. You could not allow that.
No, I don't think it would work in that space, just because of the way it interacts with the office and everything, but, no, but, Trader Joe's is, it's a great use in general, and.
It's one of the #1 requests
Yeah.
in Lower Manhattan, and I'm not just talking Battery Park City, but overall,
Yeah.
is to have some kind of an amenity like that. I mean, if you take a look, I would counter to say that not as many stores as you think are supported by the people in the building,
Yeah.
because, right? And even looking from Brookfield through the Oculus, that whole row of stores ends up consistently turned over, because if you're not going to Devin Blakely or getting an ice cream, those stores are like,
Yeah.
Yeah. they're just
people
not
want
lasting.
something like the old World Trade Center Mall in terms of something that you can actually use and need.
Yeah.
So that
It's
makes,
everyday services, yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
and for the people who live here and the people who work here. So I think Trader Joe's would be a big hit with your tenants too.
Yeah.
Well, because that's why I was
Getting to,
segueing
yeah,
into
yeah,
that,
it's not
because
just the,
the district does not support the neighborhood. The shopping there is,
it's
it's just
expensive.
prohibitive, it's just like going into, one of your
Yeah.
Madison Avenue stores, the
Yeah.
prices don't make sense. And it's like they just put it there just,
To look cool.
Well, for
I mean,
tourists.
but that's all of Brookfield, it looks cool.
Well, so I don't wanna comment on their business, I think that there's components of it that do well and some that don't do as
Right.
well, and I think that, you guys, you should engage them and they should hear your concerns, and I think they should be listening to you because that would help them out their business.
One's gonna
But I
assume
think-
they
I think-
charge,
I
they
think-
charge to pay the
Yeah.
rent.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
you're off topic, no offense.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just, nailing one vendor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether there are people in the community who love them, there are people in the community who do not love them. But what we have an opportunity to comment on is a vacant space and the items. The broadsheet ran what would you like to see in Lower Manhattan over here? And there are many other publications, and one of the largest things that
That's Trader
people say is they want a Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Like they wanted a Fairway, they wanted a Trader Joe's. Those are the kind of uses that there aren't large spaces in Lower Manhattan. You happen to be unique in your availability, and it would actually draw more people in to the location, which is a win-win, one would think.
I would say, I'm always happy to take everyone's thoughts when it comes to what they'd like to see, and the truth of the matter is, we have an 8 million square foot complex, it's mostly leased, but there's always turnover, and there's always opportunities to, create something that's just better holistically for the, for the people that live around here, people that work around here. So I think I'm always all ears when it comes to ideas and thoughts like that. Trader Joe's, I think, would be possible if we find the right space for it.
And I think Mark has given us an amazing amount of his time.
Yes,
I'm
thank
gonna
you
use
very
the
much.
tech
Yeah,
guy, so I
so-
hate him.
And I'd like to say thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I know I'm harsh and I have a lot of criticism, but thank you for being here and taking the time to come and talk with us. It's really
Of course.
important.
And
No,
what
I
you said
think
about
none
Art
of
Brookfield
this
is
personally,
huge.
like,
I mean,
it's
that's
all-
a
it's all-
significant investment, and creates a lot of value for people who live here, so.
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure.
But I do think that we should have a follow-up
Yeah.
with the Battery Park City Authority about that public space
Yeah.
that you have for the deck, for usage, since it is public, and for the ground level, because if we can find a way to enhance that end of your building in the goal of modernizing and amenities, I see lots of opportunities, because
Yeah.
lots of people from Brookfield, when they leave and they see that beautiful community garden, they're like, wow, this is super cool.
Mhm.
So we could certainly have a conversation about something like that. We could
Yeah.
have a conversation about, I mean, there are no tennis courts. Imagine how beneficial it would be to have a tennis court in the building that could be offered to residents and tenants.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, there's a lot of amenities and probably a lot of great ideas, and I think look, half of the role is to ideate and think about creating
Exactly.
things that are interesting, so, again, it's all part of the constructive feedback. Again, I consider everything constructive, right? There's great things and there's things that we obviously get better at, and, always happy to come and, hear the feedback.
Thank you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am we're gonna move on to the bicycle conversation for New York City, of what's going on with the rules and regs, because that is a major thing, and how it affects us in Battery Park City versus.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
There are, rules and regs and things happening, and if I could get the laptop to come up, I could really say. Okay, Justine, can you do me a huge favor?
Yeah.
Can you run out to the guy out front and see if we can get somebody to unlock the laptop?
I'll
Because I have slides.
Okay.
Figure out how to do it, it would be even better. Okay, so let's start talking a little bit about e-bikes, e-scooters, city legislation, and what's going on. Currently, in New York State, e-bikes are illegal, and electric scooters are illegal. If you cannot license it, and you cannot register it, then you cannot use it on New York State roads, which is rather interesting when you come to consider not only Battery Park City, but the fact that most of the West Side Highway is also known as State Route 9A. So there are lots of conversations that we can certainly have on this topic. The city is taking up several bills.
They're coming.
Okay, on the e-bike legislation to approve a lot of it in New York City. Now, Hudson River Park Trust has gone and passed an advisory council resolution. They do not want, the Hudson River Park Trust does not want any electric motorized bicycles on the greenway, nor in the park. Flat. That's just where they are. They find that it is too dangerous. It is concerning for them. They don't have stoplights and traffic lights at every crossing, so their suggestion was they are not allowed on the greenway at all. In history, in the conversations we had in the bicycle working group, we had the conversations of you define it differently. If it's like if it's ADA required, you can be on the Esplanade, but we said that motorized bicycles do not belong on the Esplanade. Pedal assist is one thing, and if you need it for ADA compliance, but a motorized vehicle, for lack of a better word, belonged on the greenway, which puts us in direct, and the streets, puts us in direct opposition to what HRP wants, and also puts us in somewhat of an opposition with the city is, as well as state law. Because according to state law, they're not allowed anywhere in the parks, period. They're not allowed on certain streets in Battery Park City on the north side because they are still owned by BPCA, and they should not be allowed on the greenway. So that's, I have the slides as soon as Ken comes. So as soon as he comes, I'll get that up. But so that starts part, yeah.
I've always been curious, is there a legislative carve-out, you said ADA, like mobility scooters for disabled people? Those are specifically allowed, right?
No,
So they're illegal.
they're just not talked about.
That's what I thought was the case.
Like I said, this
All
whole
of them are
thing is-
illegal, they're not registerable, you can't have a license to drive one, and they,
And they are not talked about.
that is like stunning abdication and hypocrisy on the part of
It's
regulators
not
and lawmakers.
illegal to own it, it's illegal to operate.
Correct.
You can own it,
You can't operate it.
you can't
So you
operate
can carry it on your back.
it. It's when you get one.
So,
But nobody has ever written a summons for a disabled person or an old person riding around in one of these things.
so
Common sense.
in New York
The
City.
law's the law, where,
All right, hold on, Matt.
Common sense.
E-bikes are classified as a motor-driven bicycle and are subject to registration, licensing, and insurance requirements that apply to motor vehicles. So the reason why we're having these discussions here is that one.
Betty, what were you saying, that your scooter is not legal?
Mine's an e-tricycle, which is technically illegal.
Okay. So in New York State, they're subject to registration, licensing, insurance that apply. However, the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles does not recognize e-bikes as vehicles with these requirements, has no system for supplying registration and licensing. Therefore, riding an electric bicycle in New York State is illegal, which applies to electric scooters as well. In New York City, the law is interpreted to imply that pedal assist e-bikes are legal to ride, but throttle actuated e-bikes are not legal. So do we understand the difference so far? Okay. New York State further says, vehicles that cannot be registered or operated on interstate sidewalks, streets, or highways, all right, any area that allows public motor vehicle traffic. You may be arrested if you are a motorized scooter, which is all kinds, mini bikes, off-roads, ATVs, go-karts, golf carts, and motor-assisted bicycles. So, and they define a motor-assisted bicycle as, it says, a motor-assisted bicycle does not qualify for registration, same as a motorcycle would, moped, or ATV, and doesn't have the same equipment. Let's start.
Okay, that includes the motorized skateboards, which there are a lot of in Berry Park City too.
Right, and those are illegal as well.
Right.
But no one seems to
Enforce it.
do anything.
Yeah, right.
All right, so what we're here tonight to try and figure out and have a discussion on is Battery Park City, because the city is going through the legislation. And I don't want Cortana, I just want to open the file, thank you. Anybody better on an HP than I am?
Trying to find your.
I got my USB key in, I just gotta find it. I was thinking if I tried a folder, but I don't
No.
know this poor man's.
Go to
Bottom left.
bottom
what I
left.
tried
Go ahead,
before.
go to-
It's got,
Is it in my office? I don't know.
This is,
An ad for Apple.
yeah.
this is absolutely an ad for Apple because I cannot figure this out.
Right, so it's gonna be like, you know, plug it in and out, hey, Tammy.
Try just you typing it, it says,
You wanted to run, so no, close that, don't do that, ask you later.
Ask them later.
No, don't ask me later, just sit down.
All right, wait. Somebody who knows how to operate an HP.
So my vote is no electric on the Esplanade. Gotta go, bye.
What about the bikeway? know how to HP it, I'm all down with that. I hear it. Oh, wait, 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 wait.
Right corner, the right corner.
That's exactly what I saw. I saw something change. Two notifications.
Firewall.
You got an idea?
My job at HP that I use for community board is that one. Oh, thank you. No name, D.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, I got it.
That's
I'm
it.
gonna take, yep, that one.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Art. Think I'll go here. Okay, now, go away. No, first things first, go away. Oh, crap. No.
The PowerPoint, the bot went away.
It's not letting me open.
Yes, there it's at the bottom again. There it is.
I'll just say it's ask me later. Accept it. Okay. All righty, I'm happy now. Here we go.
Okay, but
So
it's not on
here-
the screen anymore. You have to open it up on the screen.
Why is it not open on the
Is
screen?
it on your screen, not the screen?
Yeah.
Slideshow.
There you go.
There we go. All right, so here we go. So intro 1250 is an operation of certain. The bill that's in front of City Council removes prohibitions for the local law to operate, allows for use of electric scooters that are incapable of exceeding 15 miles per hour, and reduces fines for operating them that are prohibited by local law.
Allows
Okay, this,
incapable.
right. Motorized scooters that operate in a way that endanger safety are subject to impoundment.
Okay.
So what that's about is, right now, they impound scooters left and right, and it's affecting the delivery guys. So clarify that operators of electric scooters are subject to laws applicable to bicycle operators. Now, I also think bicycle operators are supposed to operate by car rules.
Mm-hmm.
So they are supposed to operate by motor vehicle rules. I believe that any legislation should say, not by bicycle operator rules, but by motor vehicle
yeah.
rules.
Agreed.
Because if you're at a stoplight, you need to stop. If you're at a stop sign, you need to stop. And,
Yep.
okay.
So isn't a bicycle supposed to do that, just a plain old bike?
They are.
Yes,
They are.
but
Okay.
it makes people think that it's a lesser level of,
I also agree with you, but it's no
but
enforcement
yeah.
there.
there's no one
Okay.
there.
Intro 1264 does legislation removes prohibitions, would allow for the use of exceeding 20 miles per hour, so it's a higher speed limit, reduces fines, and there you go. Same thing, that's a different type. This one is a pilot program for what you've seen are the Uber and other electric bike and electric scooter programs. So this one requires DOT to start a pilot program. This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with us in Battery Park City, except to say we need to address shared electric scooters in terms of, are they gonna be allowed in the parks or not? Because if this passes, we need to be able to say, HRPT has said they want none of it, okay?
So that's all on the Greenway, right? Or only their portion of the Greenway?
They don't want it on the green.
I agree, I think.
They don't want it anywhere in HRP, that if you're gonna ride an electric anything, they want you in the street.
I agree. Except, not,
Beyond
but not you
that,
guys.
I can't believe people are actually saying this.
But no, not someone who needs it to get around for,
I'm not talking about that
Mobility.
either. I'm talking about somebody who goes to Manhattan Community College and wants to get around on transport. You want them out on West Street, and you think the people who drive are gonna love
oh
you?
no, I don't want them riding it
That's
at
where
all.
you're telling them to go. You're saying get off the bikeway with the other bikes and get out there with the cars and trucks.
Which
Because
is
that's
really
what
saying
wants you
don't ride
instead.
them.
No, but they're going to ride them, and they do ride
But I'll
them.
take that on though, right, because, like, that's a hard question, but those aren't bikes. And
Yes,
those-
they are.
God, you can define them as such, but a motorized vehicle should, whether it's a bike, 2 wheels or 3 wheels, absent the handicap, should not go those greenways. There are more kids on those greenways, there are more.
The
And even
kids
if
can go on the pedestrian areas, which run parallel to
Pedal
it.
assist and the motorized ones, or just the?
No.
I think we're talking about the motorized ones.
The motorized motorized ones, right? That's what this is talking about, is the motorized ones.
Actually, this isn't talking about anything, it's what
Oh.
it says, the law actually says is DOT will write the rules, certain e-bikes. What does certain?
Yeah, certain is up to
You
you.
don't know, I don't
Right.
know, nobody knows.
So,
But
so
DOT
that's, so that's the question,
Right.
but I think
It's not enough.
the premise should be that we could write the rule or suggest a rule as we see, but I think the premise should be those e-bikes, motorized bikes, bikes that are motorized accessible should not be on those footpaths.
So here's,
Except in
let's keep going through, because we're getting away from the point, we're not gonna argue the city thing here. Because the purview for where the Battery Park City Committee has to sit is what happens within the realm of Battery Park City, because we're state land. So because we are unlike the rest of the city, city rules and city governance of the parks do not exist here. Okay, so that's why when we're looking at this committee discussion, this is what we discussed last night in Transportation Committee. These are all the slides that I took from Reggie last night, right? What kind of rollout, what kind of smooth discussion are the local restrictions and enforcement? Okay, here's some of the crash data. Understanding that this is from NYPD as of May of 2018. It does not necessarily include everything, because they have not always taken where there was injuries that do not result in going to a hospital. If you walk away, it's not necessarily included. But here's 217 bicycle data.
Wait, go back, what does that mean, occupant? Occupant of what? The rider of the bike?
Occupant, if you had a kid in the
Oh, motor vehicle passengers,
motor
okay,
vehicle passengers, exactly.
okay.
Okay. If you were the second person on the motorcycle, you're an occupant, if you're not the one driving it. Okay?
Well, that's also for cars, I'll ask.
Yeah, exactly. So this is pedestrians, but again,
And bikes.
if people walk away, it's not necessarily. We already know that there are lots of accidents.
Yeah,
All right, we want to make sure, I think we want to be accessible for all in some ways, but we need to really think this through. I think we need to be ADA accessible.
yes, 100%.
All right, so there's by precinct. So in the first precinct, there were 83 crashes, 83 bicycle, and 1 bicycle fatality. That's in 1 year. And 3 motor vehicles, right? That does not include anything that happened from October 31st. That's not,
Right, that
doesn't count. on
Well,
the
it's not
bike
in
lane.
here. Oh,
Think about that.
the terrorist attack doesn't count.
I don't think that's in here.
No,
Because there was-
it can't be in here,
Correct.
Why is
because there's not enough people are dead.
Because there was more than 1 bicycle fatality. We know there was a bicycle fatality in 2017.
We know there was, that the poor girl
And we
that
know there
died
was more than 1.
on
And so
October
where they
31st.
only have 1 reported in the first precinct, we know from our experience in Battery Park City that this is not as flashy as it could be. Okay.
But also, that was
Right.
just.
So, but this gives you an idea of what's going on. So I've got 13 slides about that. Okay. So here is a total look from 2002 to 2016. But we need to really think about this. We have had a fantastic increase in alternate transportation. So we need to not look back, but really need to think to look forward.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to ensure people like Dr. K can get around and get where they need to go. Because I also agree with Betty, I don't think if you are in a motorized scooter, you should not be forced onto West Street.
Oh, 100%.
I think that that's saying
But-
that that's
but-
your only option, I think is putting people in harm's way immediately.
But that's insanity. No, you cannot be, if you're handicapped, which,
Well, forget handicap. Casey Neistat did a really good video where he got stopped by the park police over on the Greenway, or Hudson River. And they tell him, they're going to find him and how he should be going out on West Street because that's where he should be.
that's what it, yeah.
And it goes, really? Well, I can't go here, I'm dangerous. You want me out on West Street? Yes, we need you out on West Street. And that's what they're saying.
Well,
That's what they're
But
saying.
what was he riding?
Alright.
He was riding.
It's not that. A boosted board.
So let's try and focus back to the parks, the streets in Battery Park City, and the Greenway.
You have a set of questions up there we're supposed to be talking about?
Yep. When we go back over.
Hey, that one. Our electric bicycles and electric scooters is good for our community, collective run.
Scooters, a scooter can be anything from what you see, which would be a regular type of kid scooter with a motor on it.
Right.
Anything
That's
that
what I
has the ability to go 15, 20 miles an hour.
Are they calling skateboards that people do scooters?
Those are electric scooters as well, technically. So, let's start with where we had started. We had started on the bicycle working group 3 years ago saying, no electric, other than ADA required,
Yeah.
no electric bikes,
Or
no
scooter.
throttle bikes, none of that on the Esplanade itself. And then if you were gonna ride one of those, you needed to be on the greenway. That's a question that we need to
Are
really
you
come.
calling it pedal assist, city bike? What is that?
That's a question.
And they're fast. They're fast. The second you put that pedal down, it's like, so far.
Okay, so think about what you're gonna say, and
Oh,
what
there's
I'd love to
city
hear
bikes.
back, because we're gonna
Wow.
have to do feedback, and we need to have Nick work on rules with us, so think about, let's keep it concise.
Can I just,
Mason's going first and then Nick.
as a point of introduction, and a point of information?
Sure, I'm gonna close the door.
So reading through what City DOT has said on this to answer Jeff's question is I believe that for the purposes of what we're discussing here, DOT makes a distinction between obviously scooters and e-scooters and e-bikes, but within e-bikes, they distinguish between fully electric bikes,
Throttle and pedal assist.
throttle versus pedal assist. Pedal
Right.
assist are legal today because they're out on the streets.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
so that's,
City bikes.
I'm not
City
talking-
Bike is doing this.
In the world we live in now, these things are already legal if they're pedal assist. What we're
Yeah.
talking
In New
about
York
is
City,
filling
but
it
they're
out
not actually technically legal in New York State.
from throttle, right? So there's,
but,
It's kind of-
okay, well, go ahead, you
Pedal
first,
assist is not
Mason.
legal in New York State either, because it's motorized,
But we have New York City Police.
except in Battery Park City.
But, okay, Mason.
I was just gonna share a story, because I use City Bike all the time to get to school, and I used a pedal assist City Bike, and I actually got into a crash going down like Warren Street. Like I was going, like, I was trying to go in between the cars and like get past, and a guy opened his door without looking. And I was going too fast because I was on the pedal assist. And I just think that's relevant. I think that, I don't think it would be good to put, I think it's important to keep them on the greenway so they don't have to go in the streets where they can pull all this stuff where they're gonna try to get past everyone and be on West Street with crazy drivers. I think that's ridiculous.
How do you feel about the Esplanade?
That's different.
Okay.
But to push back on that, sorry, John.
No, wait, I want everybody to say their opinion first, and then we'll push back, because otherwise we're gonna start with one-to-one arguments. Jeff?
Well, only mine's a reaction to that, so I'm not a. My opinion is that if you have motorized vehicles on greenways, you're endangering people on the greenways. So if you want a motorized vehicle, other than, something you need to get around, then you decide, is it worth the risk of being in the street? Because I don't think people want them on the right way, on the right ways. You're endangering everyone on the bikeways who's actually biking, working to go 20 miles an hour. 20 miles an hour, 15 miles per hour, to give you guys perspective, if you're not bicyclists are. Like, even on the flat right here, like I biked up to 90th Street and back last night, so nice out. And I was hauling as hard as I could. And of course I had to stop here and there's people there. But I averaged 17 miles an hour, and I was really moving some of the time. And that's on the flat. So 17, 15 to 20 miles an hour, like Eric and I were talking about, that's not slow.
No.
You can't react to that. You can't react to a kid coming out all of a sudden. You can't react to someone who's on a regular bike who decides to swerve, or I was biking back, he was on a push scooter, and he decided to go across both lanes and right almost into me. I just got by him before he came into me. So when you put people going that fast, you have to work hard to go that fast if you're just biking. But if you just have a throttle or a pedal assist, you can go that fast very easily, and you're really dangerous. Plus, your bike weighs more because it has that on it.
That's right.
So you're adding bulk and weight to the bike, so it's harder to stop faster. And you hit people going faster, and you can do a lot of damage. So my view would be, if you want that motorized experience, you are now a vehicle that should be in the street and not be on the greenway, where we should have expectations of safety.
Justine, you're next.
I have a question, if anybody knows the answer to it. The city bike ones, they go 15 miles an hour max?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because
They're not that fast, but they give
if
you
the,
extra.
the city bike
I mean,
pedal
to
assist.
get it 15,
You
it's
have to
not as
ped-
easy as you would think.
Okay, because the city bike,
It gives you a burst right away, but it kind of levels out.
alright,
It doesn't keep pumping energy into you. Like when you first pedal, you kind of can't really let it actually take off.
and
Then
then,
it kind of levels out.
alright, because if city bike already has them out there, it's going to be dangerous to force people who could just pick up a city bike and put them on the street. So I think the pedal assist city bikes, I think that ADA accessible, whatever you need for ADA reasons, should be on the Greenway, not the Esplanade. I think that anything that is beyond pedal assist, and I also think that, okay, I think they should, anything that is electric without pedal assist, that's throttle, should not be allowed on the Greenway or the Esplanade. And I also think that there should be a law specific to delivery drivers that they cannot use anything but regular bicycles.
You can't do that, you can't, that's,
That'll never happen.
that
Well,
one.
I mean, but they're the ones who are the most
Okay.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Eric's next.
Thanks. To try and keep my points simple, I think I look at it more as just a, frankly, it's a risk allocation issue. And if you're looking at between, and Jeff, you still have my thunder, but if you're looking between a bicyclist on some sort of motorized, I'm not gonna get into the definition, but some sort of motorized bicycle versus pedestrians, that just is a straight risk allocation issue. The pedestrian's gonna get clocked time and time again.
Yeah.
So if you assume the risk of getting on a bike with a throttle and with pedal assist or however the whole entire category,
You're assuming the
that's
most
part of the
dangerous.
risk you're assuming that I've got to drive that bicycle in the street. Now, it's harsh when you say West Street because we all see West Street as a 4-lane Route 9A issue. But again, it goes back to risk allocation. Would you rather that motorized vehicle be either buffering on West Street or taking on pedestrians in a greenway where pedestrians are kind of lollygagging around, head up, kids coming every which way, people coming in and coming out, like it's.
Because there's a solution to being on West Street,
Just
go one
need-
block
just need
over.
limit-
Right, and that was where I was gonna get, I was like, we can't just use West Street to be the reason how we define it, it's like, there are other options other than West Street.
West is the worst of all possibilities.
Yeah.
We use that as, you know, when you're saying going 20 miles an hour on West Street, that's the worst of all possibilities.
Agreed.
When we take a look at it and we're thinking North End Avenue, and you're thinking Albany Street, you're thinking Battery Place, actually, it shouldn't be very much different.
Yeah.
No, and I think, to your point about the worst possible scenario, then I would respond, the worst possible scenario is putting those bikes and those motorized scooters on a greenway with people
Yes.
lollygagging and not paying attention. To
Exactly.
me, that, of those two ends, I'd rather they deal with the cars than the pedestrians deal with them.
Judith and Kathy, and then I'm gonna go, and then
Just
Dr. K. and-
Point of information, I looked up city bikes, they say it can go up to 18 miles per hour. With pedal assist.
That's fast.
So I really have to agree with Jeff. I mean, first of all, I think in the last couple of years, like the bike traffic alone, like forget about pedal assisted scooters, on the Greenway has increased so dramatically that I'm constantly like, and there's so many blocks too, there's so many corners, like even if you wanna walk 5 blocks, you know, a short distance, you've got all these intersections to navigate, and I feel like my kids and I are constantly like pulling each other back from the corner. So to add this to the Greenway, I think would be so dangerous. I mean, I think the Esplanade is completely out of the question. Like, to me, that's not even a question
Yeah.
because, you know, that, we talk about lollygagging, like
Yeah.
people are looking at the Statue of Liberty, whatever, like you can't bring any electric.
It's a real pedestrian area.
Yeah, you can't bring that there.
Pedestrians
But-
aren't really supposed to be on the greenway.
But
Right,
as far
right,
as,
they are,
right,
but
but
they're
as
not
far as
supposed
the
to be.
Greenway is concerned, I
Right,
just
they always are.
think it's dangerous.
Okay, Kathy?
Pretty much the same thing everyone has said. I'll speak from the perspective of somebody who can't get out of the way so fast. It's really become a nightmare. You don't know what's coming at you at what speed, at what,
Yeah.
you know, like there are kids coming out of Gateway on motorized scooters and, you know, and they can't control those pretty much and hitting people. So, you know, I don't use the Greenway for walking so much, so I would defer to the people who do bike and know that, but not at all on the Esplanade, and I just,
So-
there are too many motorized things of different
I agree.
speeds and types coming at people, and it just,
So here's my 2 cents on this, and then we'll come back, Jeff, to you. My 2 cents is, there's no chance in the parks, because I think that the parks, we did amazing user count studies, and we've done so many wonderful things to improve our parks. And I think in Battery Park City, from Rockefeller through Wagner,
Yeah.
pedal assist is,
Out.
or electric is just not safe, period. It is just not a wise thing. In the streets is the streets, and people choose to be in the streets, that's their choice. I think that there needs to be, I've ridden with my kids now that they're older on the Greenway, and it's petrifying when electric bikes go whizzing by. It's petrifying.
Yeah.
I think more for them than for me, and if you're an unsteady rider, it's kind of hard. And then you've got the people who are commuting, and they're just, you know, rolling back and forth. And you can't make a rule that applies Monday to Friday and weekends. So I think we need to look at it a little bit more holistically. I also think there needs to be determination for ADA, because I do not want Betty in the middle of West Street.
No, of
And
course not.
Betty, I mean, I walk down the street with Betty, and let me tell you, she's fast and she's dedicated and she's good at where she's going, but dang, I wouldn't want her to be because she's too low, right?
Oh, yeah,
She's
no.
not standing,
Isn't it
she's
about
seated.
Isn't it for sidewalks? Aren't sidewalks, how are you supposed to get around?
Technically, there's no ruling on anything.
I said there's no real ruling, that's why it's.
Right.
You can't
So-
really-
Are you allowed to or supposed to be in the greenway?
Yeah, there, you see
There's no
motorized
reason why
wheelchairs.
not.
I use the Greenway.
Yeah,
And you
I
should.
See them being allowed.
And you should.
See, I think if it is
You
a
could-
motorized, I think if it is a motorized wheelchair,
It
or
goes the
it
speed
is
of
an
a bike.
ADA thing.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a guy in a motorized
No,
scooter
I know.
like this,
But
but I think if it's something like Betty, then she does not belong in the street because you
Oh, yeah,
can't be
100%.
seen.
I agree, I'm asking, I would think I
Be
would
more on
think, I
the
would think you're supposed to be
walkway.
on sidewalks, like people, like a pedestrian. Pedestrians aren't supposed to be in the greenway.
Depends what
Correct.
you're doing. If you're going someplace and commuting and that's your way to get to work, then you could be on the Greenway.
All right.
I mean,
So
don't
let's
think
let
that's
Betty
what it
talk
is.
because Betty
That's
has a
not what
completely
it is.
different perspective because she's,
I've been doing this for decades, I have a whole different perspective. Coming out of physical therapy where this has been an issue forever. I mean, I was able to walk most of my life, but nevertheless, because of my profession, what I did. There are a group of people now talking about electric devices, and we're talking about speed limits. You don't worry about the device because it's the common sense of the driver, just like it is with cars. And so they'll talk about, what pedestrian ways, such as the Esplanade should be, to me, a pedestrian way, will be, set your speed limit, 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, absolute max. And then don't dictate and so worried about what device it is as much as you can't go faster than this, period. And a lot of groups won't do it because they want to go through and this is too slow. Make it 3.5, 4 miles an hour. We know that the park people use their trucks on that road. We know that people do running, clubs are out there running. You can't make the speed limit too ridiculous because you don't want to stop those activities. And I don't hear anyone complaining about those.
Bicycles go 4 miles an hour too.
yeah, they do.
Well, you would force them down to that kind of speed limit. With a Greenway, they talk about a different kind of speed. They'll say, you know what, this is more for the going up to 15, 20 miles an hour. Because realistically, what kind of bicycle speed can people do pedaling it themselves?
10 to
I know my
15.
son
You're
does
welcome.
15 to 20, and
Yeah.
that's a standard, just pedaling along. That's just using a pedal bike. Put a speed limit on it. Now to condemn and say someone with an e-bike can't go that fast, but somebody who's pedaling it can, is ridiculous. Will never hold up in court. There's no reason to do it. And the reality is, when I've ended up in the street almost getting hit by a bus, it's the pedestrians, because they're not paying attention. And they walk in front of me all the time. Together, me plus my scooter weighs 150 pounds. A lot of people out there weigh more than that when they step on their feet.
Yeah.
They knock me over all the time. So let's not get into this kowtowing to pedestrians who are busy on their phones rather than paying attention. They need to wake up too.
so we
It's a busy place. I mean, the bottom line is it's a busy place.
We had some common themes last night at the Battery Park City Committee, at the Transportation Committee meeting. Sorry, I'm trying to find my notes from last night.
You might
And
consider, talking about speed.
we
makes
are
more
doing a
sense.
resolution, and in the resolution, the conversations have to do, the therefore be it resolves, that, Yep, go ahead, while I'm finding this.
I was telling this to Jeff, I just thought I'd speak to the group. I also think, and I'm sympathetic to the ADA point, I think the ADA point can actually be handled pretty easily, right?
I do
Because
too.
if the only, because if the only folks who are allowed in the Greenway are folks who are ADA, who need it for ADA purposes.
But you
if
can't ask me for proof.
But if you were driving, so put on a motorized vehicle, if you park in a car and you hung up your ADA sticker, your placard, that would let the police officer know that you shouldn't be ticketed because you are handicapped.
So you want me to put a big sign, I'm a cripple?
No, I
You can't
no.
do that.
I think you carry your, you can, like everybody else, you have a handicap permit.
It's like,
There's a,
You have to show your license to get pulled over. You get
Yeah.
pulled over in space that's only there for.
if all we say is that no motor scooters on the, again, to work on the definition, but no motor scooters in the Greenway unless you are needed for ADA purposes. Well, if somebody were to stop you, a police officer and say, oh man, you don't belong here, I mean, it's pretty easy answers. Well, I mean, that way, people who are on it are
I
going
do
to.
get asked that all the time. I get stopped by people from Brookfield. Why don't you walk through here? You need to walk your device. I could walk, I wouldn't have the friggin' device.
right.
That is so offensive. If you ask
yeah.
a minority group a question
Okay.
like that, they would be yelling and
So,
screaming.
Let me read to you what the therefore be it resolved from the Hudson River Park Advisory Council strongly suggests any legislation that will remove current prohibitions on e-bikes and e-scooters include provisions prohibiting such vehicles on bikeways and greenways in New York City, especially on the Hudson River Park Bikeway. We also suggest that bikes with throttles that enable them to travel at high speeds be banned on all bike paths and greenways.
Well, what's the first part? Isn't that ban also?
The first one talks about the legislation, because the legislation that I showed, the city council is doing legislation. So you have to take into account the legislation. Now, we need to take into account and really move forward for where we think we're gonna be, for the parks. I think I have heard almost everybody say, unless I am incorrect, that no one is comfortable with having them on the Esplanade.
Or any parks, yeah, which to me is all the parks, whatever level.
Right? Does
Right.
everybody agree with that? So then the question becomes, and that goes from park to park, and that's
Yes.
from Battery Park City Authority to understand. You have a greater issue because you own streets, and we have state-owned streets, and technically they're illegal on all state-owned streets, period.
But
So then the question starts to become, where does the Battery Park City Committee and the Battery Park City Authority weigh in on the Greenway as it persists through Battery Park City? Because if we follow HRPT's lead, then we're saying no from Wagner through all of the west side, on the Greenway.
up to the end of Spice Stuyvesant, because that's all we
Well,
have
for us,
control
we
over.
just talked about that, and
Yeah.
I, for throttle bikes, I think there's no question, I think that they don't belong there.
They're not even legal.
I agree with throttle
Right.
bikes, yeah.
But if they're
Is
looking,
this legislation gonna make them legal?
one of them does.
Yeah, is there options, the legislation, or what is it?
It asks DOT
It says certain e-bikes, so it's up to DOT to do in the future.
E-bikes that can go no more than 20
20
miles an
miles an
hour,
hour.
e-scooters that can go no more than.
But it doesn't say throttle or pedal assist.
What, doesn't say
The
what
law
kind,
does.
yeah.
And what it does require is that the DOT create a program to assist low-income individuals with the conversion from throttle to pedal assist. They wanna get rid of throttles, which.
So
What you
that's
said,
basically
but-
saying they wanna slow the bikes
They
down.
wanna slow it
It's a
down.
good idea. Just put speed limits, don't worry about how you're getting around.
Right.
Because
Which
there
makes a
are,
lot of sense.
which makes a lot of, yeah.
It has to be enforceable to the police.
It's like cars. Cars,
Right.
like, just like you can go a lot faster than the speed limit, but you're not supposed to, so.
And that's what I
Cars,
said.
cars,
I lived,
you can't take cars everywhere, exactly.
Right. I agree. That's where the debate's.
Right.
So, I mean, the last remaining piece that we need to figure out is the Greenway. And then the question is, do we do a resolution and call for a vote? Or do we wait and see what the city legislation comes out and weigh in afterwards?
I don't think
And
it's,
that's for
I don't think
Eric
it's that
and
pressing,
Nick
it's
to
winter.
provide feedback
I mean, it's winter, we can wait. I think we have a longer term problem brewing, and I hope the legislators realize that, which is, in the end, it could be good for everybody if there's more people on bikes.
Yeah.
And you'll have more people on bikes if you do pedal assist, because people who don't love biking will be like, oh, it's kind of easy, I can get around.
And you don't get sweaty.
Yeah, and you'll have less cars, you'll have less pollution. I mean, if I'm talking, significantly in the future, not decades, but 5, 8 years. And so I think at that point, the legislation needs to be written so they can revisit what ends up where. There might need to be specialized lanes in the road just for motorized vehicles that are not cars.
Oh, it's gonna be too late if we wait until after the legislation is passed.
The difference for Battery Park City is Battery Park
State
City
land.
Authority makes its own rules for its own parks. And I think no one is disagreeing that the answer is in the parks, there are no electric scooters unless you're ADA required to have one, or electric bikes.
Are you
You
sure
walk it
that's a
through, but
rule?
you're not
I
riding.
still wanna know clarification on that. You're assuming you're allowed to be on the greenway on the ADA compliant vehicle. I don't know that that's true.
I don't
mean, it's
either.
not what they're built for. They're built for bikes, not pedestrians, not ADA compliant vehicles.
That's true, but they're also not built for scooters either, but you're gonna get,
I
you get
agree.
people with scooters on them. I ride my scooter on it. My foot's
The scooter becomes a blurry line between a scooter and a bike if you're pushing it. It's a two-wheel vehicle that you're moving on.
Yeah, like rollerblades.
You're very clearly not doing that if you're walking, and as you say, staring at your phone the whole time.
So,
Or
And
if
this is
you're in
separate
an
from the
ADA
pedestrian
compliant
path.
battery-powered
All right.
vehicle, we can
So
go
we-
relatively quickly and
so
also
we need-
fly
we need-
taking
we
up
need
less
to-
space.
I think the Battery Park City Authority has heard us well enough about how we feel about the parks themselves and the Esplanade for electric. No electric, no full electric, and unless it's ADA required, no.
I mean, as of right now, people will take city bike pedal assist bikes on there. There's
Right.
probably not much you can do about that beyond the speed
Speed
limit
limits.
concept, but there's no enforcement
But
because
you
there
know,
aren't plates.
there's no enforcement, and in the worst case scenario, if you're pedaling and you're not using the assist.
They can't tell,
They can
Yeah,
tell.
so
Go
it's
ahead.
just-
which is what they've complained about, since then.
Yeah, I think it's also important to try to put like the signage up, to try to like let people know if we're doing that, the Esplanade and all the parks, to make sure that they know that electric city bikes or all electric bikes aren't allowed in parks or on greenways.
That's really important in the wayfinding.
Yeah, it's a new development that we didn't know
So
about
then,
before.
what do we need to come to a point and move it forward, right? We'll have a full board resolution to go through, which will do all of the city. We could let the full board weigh in on the greenway and leave it for the full board, and we can address only the parks. If we have consensus on the way we feel for the parks, we can leave it to simply the parks. And I think that's not a bad way to go for our committee for this time. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have
I think we'll do
consensus
that
on
at
the
the full
greenway
board
too. I
anyway.
think we have consensus on the
All right.
greenway.
Then
What's
let's,
What's the consensus?
I think we should speak as a committee and then take a.
Yeah.
you got it.
Well, what do we think our consensus is on the greenway?
Well, so far I've heard, no motor scooters or e-bikes.
No throttle is what I would, maybe, what's that distinction?
No, and no throttle in any of the parks.
I'm probably the furthest side, I think,
You say no nothing.
no, nothing. If you're not pedaling it yourself with subject to some ADA carve-outs, no.
That's what I think.
That's what I think too.
I think that too, unless there's an electric city bike available when I'm taking my journey.
I was gonna say, if City Bike, well, except because City Bike is so prevalent and it's there, I don't see.
People are gonna use
People
it.
are gonna use it, it's available, so I would have to.
So you're
make-
saying pedal assist on the greenway,
I say
no
pedal
full.
assist,
I
yeah.
say pedal assist on the greenway, but no full throttle. except for
E-scooters,
ADA.
e-scooters and e-bikes,
I think
And
we should
boosted
do-
boards, we gotta talk about, are those count as e-scooters?
they count as e-scooters.
And but you disagree. You think it
No, I'm
also,
with him, I go with, I would allow everything. That's what uses it now. I use it, I know who's on there, they don't frighten me at all. Pedestrians do, and I wish
Yeah.
they'd get off the greenway.
yes.
But the electrics don't.
But in this world.
But no one's gonna enforce it.
But in this world, all the electric would be off, but you. If,
Well, according to you, what I'm saying is I disagree.
but if, so right now, what I'm hearing from you is, well, nobody really knows what they're doing, so let's not have rules to like modify behavior. I guess philosophically,
I disagree with the rule of no power assist, like city bike allowed on Greenway.
And can you
That's what I
explain,
disagree with.
could you explain why?
Power
Because if you have-
assist
if you
or
have ADA
throttle?
If you have an ADA car lot,
Personally,
why
I
would
don't
you-
care either, but at least the power assist.
Well, no,
is a
yeah,
city
because
bike.
some of us, we could take a vote on that, because I think there's a distinction here between full throttle or power assist.
I've never actually seen
But
a
I-
full
but actually,
throttle.
like-
Oh, I have.
Well, I see them all the time.
But I
Yeah, no, I have on the Greenway.
And I see the skateboard.
No, not city bike, regular bikes, it's delivery.
But I'd like to tease that a little bit, but why would you be okay with electric bikes, even if you were having one that says ADA and carved out? Like, why would you be okay with electric bikes, being power throttle or motorized?
As a way of transport for people earning a living, I'd rather run that than on a car personally. Because of the whole.
I'd rather them on a bicycle than on
I'm not a
a
health background.
That's my point, is if I'm not, I mean, you know what, if it's freezing cold or raining, it still sucks, whether you're on a regular bicycle with a pedal yourself, or you're on a, motorized throttle thing, it sucks. And if this is your life, and to say that, oh, it'll make my life better on the throttle, no, really.
But a
It sucks.
massive, outsized.
So don't, I mean, but I'm,
That's how you make your living, you don't worry about the niceties of is it raining or not. There are-
no, that's what they
I
are.
use
And so what I'm saying though
food
is,
service, so I'm not gonna badmouth the same people that I'm thanking for bringing my city.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you do,
The total vortex of the subway, right? And like, it's just, it is what it is. You get
So-
around, you get around.
I mean, to frame it,
All right, so we're taking a vote.
yeah,
because
we
that's
need to
where I'm
have
going.
levels.
I mean, I don't know if we have any kind of consensus on, I mean.
We have
Well,
consensus
we
on
can
the
have a
park.
vote of levels, because I think we've got, I think the distinction is throttle vehicles banned,
E-bikes and motor, in terms of parks.
throttle, 100% throttle,
Skateboards are throttle and so is this, 100% throttle.
except ADA.
Does it?
No.
You know what, no, I'm gonna put accessory
Why
number
do you
on
keep
there.
mentioning
What's the
ADA?
difference?
I'm sorry, why you say no, no?
Sorry,
Okay, oh, wait, we have levels, let's do levels.
what did you say?
Why you can mention ADA?
Exactly,
Has
you
nothing
can't.
to do with it. You're
What?
talking about bikes.
Oh.
Leave it as bikes.
Okay.
Leave ADA out of it.
We're talking about usage of the greenway.
But it's also electric scooters.
So just remember, the Greenway is maintained by the city and was put up by the city.
And it was supposed to be a bikeway, really.
And it's supposed to, it was put up as a bikeway, okay? And fully realize, like he was just saying, there's people that's on the Esplanade with a regular bike that can get it up to 15 miles an
Yeah.
hour. And they're usually there at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll see them going along, they wanna,
Yep,
that's their morning exercise, to go up and around, and they look around, and they hop back on the Greenway to go back and around, okay? So speed is the issue, that's not the issue. The issue is what you want going. Now, in the parks, I agree, it just should be the bicycle, scooter, not the motorized, you got, whatever the rental bikes are. The people are there, they're tourists using them, and in the summertime, because of the amount of people that's on the Esplanade, those bicycles can go fast, just because of the glut of people, okay? I mean,
oh, I
depending
know,
on the hour, I'm just saying.
you're right.
But on the Greenway, I mean, that's more of your whole board, as far as I'm concerned, on dealing with it, just because it's the city that controls that.
Except for the spit between Stuyvesant and, the Battery,
This,
right? That's us.
So I just want to be clear on a couple of things. The Greenway
Is not us?
is not Bangkok City Authority in any way, shape, or form.
they maintain the greenery in the plants only.
Planters, the eastern boundary.
So we don't care,
We-
I mean, we don't care what they say, of course we
But
don't.
that's not,
That's-
if
that's my
we're
point.
talking about the Greenway, the Bangkok City Authority wouldn't have any
And that's the
role
DOT,
in that.
right?
That's city and state DOT.
Right.
Right. And
If
this
the
whole thing
state law
arises.
changes and then the city law changes, that will be what would impact the Greenway.
Right.
The Bangkok City Authority wouldn't have a say in that.
And not do the HRBC.
And this whole thing.
Well,
I think
HRP
HRPC is getting themselves on the record. I don't think that they're doing so with any authority backing them up. Right.
Just say
They
what
passed a
want,
reso.
that can make it happen.
Yeah, they passed a resolution.
They passed a reso saying they don't want it.
They don't want it, but they don't really.
I don't think that we should comment on the Greenway. I think we need to keep it contained to the Battery Park City Parks.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where we wanna keep it structured, because that really is our purview in this. The Greenway is everywhere, and I think that that's been taken up by the Transportation Committee. I think the parks are our issue in here, being state parks operated and run by the Battery Park City Authority. Does that,
Is the Transportation Committee then speaking of the whole
correct?
Greenway?
And they did last night.
And they
it'll
did
come
all the
to
way
full
down.
board. Yep.
Okay, if they talked
All right,
about
so
it.
we're gonna,
Now, this all started over the L train shutdown.
right,
That's why the city started bringing this stuff.
Yeah.
all right.
Might be
So,
one of the ways
I'm
to-
gonna, we are all in agreement, we have said such far that for a resolution, our resolution addresses the parks and addresses says, Battery Park City Committee is urging the Battery Park City Authority to prohibit all motor scooters, electric bikes, and throttle bikes from being in any of the parks, esplanade, or operated in any of the parks, esplanade, or walkways. Correct?
It's you're saying operated in.
Operated. So you can walk it
That's
through.
a big problem.
Walk it through, if you need to get through, you walk it, but you're not and running.
Yeah, no, I'm just taking up from our residents in my building who said, you know, some of the negative side is you have to keep it with you, it's gonna be stolen. And I don't think Patrick wants to deal with a whole bunch of stolen e-bikes.
No,
So, no, because operated in.
operated. You're not gonna be riding a fully electric scooter up and down the
Oh,
Esplanade.
any wheel device.
Or any wheel
It shouldn't
device,
be
right.
driven.
Right, which applies to the guy riding his little, unicycle thing that we see, the electric one.
Right, but you can
All right.
push a stroller.
And that's really where we're stopping on this. Everybody good with that?
Good. That's-
All right, let's call a question.
Call the question.
All in favor?
Everybody.
Anybody opposed? Anybody recusing? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen, for staying, because that was the most important part for us, is to be able to have that dialogue back and forth, because when the city does what the city does, it still isn't us.
So are those, all those
We'll
laws that,
discuss, we discussed, so just so we, I think, are in the process of doing some research here on how exactly it would impact us. I think largely, right, so right now in our parks, you can't ride bikes anyway.
You're not
Regular bikes or electric bikes, not on the paths. They are allowed on the Esplanade,
yeah,
regular bikes.
regular bike.
But we also have to work with CDOT. They still need to demap the Esplanade as a bicycle-only
I
thing.
actually just emailed them again this week, and they said they would do that. So I think where the challenge may lie, we're not there yet, I think where the challenge may lie is if hypothetically the bill gets passed and e-bikes are allowed, we would have to understand how that enforcement would work. Because
And we have to put signage up, because if you're on an e-bike, you cannot take that right.
It might
Is
be
there
challenging.
any enforcement now for what you guys do behind Brookfield?
So,
I mean, it says discount for your bike,
That's
Right.
Brookfield's
but
to,
it's not, there's no, you can't be ticketed for it. In effect, you don't have the right to tell people
so
to do that.
Brookfield and Allied both, share
Brookfield
kind of
took that
responsibility.
over, Brookfield Security, we kicked it off, as per, BJ, and set it up, and then it was turned over to Brookfield to enforce that. And it more has come down to now, as I see every once in a while, there's a security guard there, but it's more when they hold an event that they have somebody there who's signed.
What's,
Okay.
enforcement really has no teeth.
I see people there when it's crowded. If it's a nice day and it's crowded, they've got people there. If it's,
No, but all they do is say, you can't do this. They can't stop you from doing it.
I'm done.
There's no
We're gonna call it, we're gonna, I
That's
am.
when you go past them.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I do, I don't, if I'm not.
All right, stop. All
I
right,
go.
we're gonna stop, because we're just slowly winding the drain.
Yeah,
Nick, I think you passed out your stuff.
oh, yeah.
We're gonna pass on that. I'm still waiting for slides from Patrick. I would have you speak, but I didn't get any slides and pretty stats. Remember, I wanted slides
I'll
and,
let them into what I post on. The one thing I would be remiss unless I mentioned, Marion Driven will kill me, please.
Oh, yeah, and
Adult support giver. there's-
Monday night.
okay. And the other thing, just so you
Otherwise,
guys.
that'll all be online.
And next month, we will have a resolution that has come for discussion, not a resolution. The senior community was talking about doing some kind of a naming opportunity for Ruth Omen. And we had some suggestions to work with the Battery Park City Authority. It'll be on the agenda next month.
Great. I'm sure you've been seeing in the
Thank you,
news
everybody.
that there's a new exhibition at the Museum of Jewish Heritage that's going to change, they hope, more visitation and everything else. And, yeah, there was a point where we had the cultural institutions presenting as a committee, and I'm wondering if it's a good time to cut them back and tell us what the plans are.
I think that'd be great.
What the
You wanna put that, we wanna have them calendared for next month?
If, yeah.
Okay with that.